Jess. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the vlog. You've already seen the title and the thumbnail, I'm sure. So welcome to Booktube Knockout Round 2. This time we are featuring Meg with books. This is a silly little competition where I have picked 8 of my favorite booktubers and ranked them based off of how similar or dissimilar they are to my own personal taste. And then I have put them in a tournament and they are going head to head to see who will come out on top and who has the book taste most similar to my own. Again, I want to make it clear, I'm not ranking them based off of the content that they create. I'm only ranking them based off of how close I feel their tastes align with my own taste. You've read the title, so you know in this video I'm going to be reading like Meg from Meg with Books. I think Meg is just such a fantastically creative person. Her videos consistently make me laugh and I just can't get over how creative she is at coming up with ideas. Honestly, I don't ever have any creative ideas, so I'm just blown away when I see someone as creative as Meg. And she's also like so funny, which like honestly is just unfair that she gets to be that creative and that funny at the same time. But you know, sometimes God gives with both hands. Good for her, because you know what? I enjoy consuming her content, so I'm happy about it. In round 1, I read like Kayla from Books and Lala, and I mentioned that she was first because she was the first person I saw do any type of video concept similar to this. Meg is second because while I have seen quite a few people do reading like other booktubers since Kayla first put out her series, Meg was the first person I saw who turned it into a competition. Under the right circumstances, I can also be a very competitive person. It's why my partner and I do not play any competitive games against each other, because I can't handle it. I am incapable of handling it. If I lose, I get very, very upset. But I just love that Meg turned it into a competition. Her turning it into a competition is part of the reason that I was inspired to make this whole series like a tournament knockout style, and that's why she's being featured second in this. Now, in terms of how similar is Meg's to my taste in books, on the scale, Meg is falling into 6th place out of 8. So, you know, she's not the bottom, but I think the main thing is that some of Meg's favorite authors are authors that I read one book from and I genuinely didn't like it. And so that, combined with the fact that we really don't have very much overlap overall in like the amount of books that we've read. Like Meg and I have only read a few of the same books. So it's really hard to make a judgment call about whether our tastes are aligned or whether they're not. So that's why she's down in 6th place. I need more information before I know which of Meg's recommendations I'm gonna personally like and which ones I won't. So this week I will be reading 3 books that are Meg's favorites. One of them I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel, and the other 2 I'm pretty certain are gonna be at least a 4-star, if not a 5-star. Let's get on to the TBR. Like I mentioned, there have been a couple of authors that I have read from where I read one book and I was like, I don't think they're for me. But they are one of Meg's favorite authors. Sometimes it's not fair to judge an author just by one book. So I am going to be reading One by One by Ruth Ware. Ruth Ware is one of Meg's favorite authors of all time. I read The Death of Mrs. Westaway and I thought it was really, really boring and I gave it 2 stars. However, Ruth Ware is a very prolific author and she's also massively popular. And so I'm curious to see how I would feel about one of her books that is more widely read and more widely received than The Death of Mrs. Westaway. Ruth Ware has so many different books with so many very different premises, so I think before I write her off entirely as an author, I should give her a second chance. The premise of this book sounds very, very interesting. It's a retelling of And Then There Were None, but it is a group of employees at like a company retreat at a ski chalet, and then there's an avalanche and like they lose power and stuff like that, so like it's very isolated, it's very cold. I love books with like a cold setting, and then people start dying. And so like all of that sounds super, super interesting. This is the book that I am most worried about on this TBR. I picked this book hoping that I'll like it. I picked all of these books hoping that I will love every single one. But Ruth Ware is one of Meg's favorite authors, so I thought it was high time that I give her another chance. So I will be reading this first, and then after I finish that, I will be reading The Project by Courtney Summers. One of my favorite videos that I saw Meg do, which was one of her more recent ones, was when she got personal recommendations by Courtney Summers, who is another one of Meg's all-time favorite authors. I love it when authors and content creators become friends and like get to know each other. I just think it's really, really cool and really special, and I loved that video. I thought it was so much fun, and Courtney Summers is one of Meg's all-time favorite authors, and I read Sadie and I loved Sadie. I gave it 5 stars, so this has the potential to be a new all-time favorite book for me. I'm very excited. This is a book that follows 2 sisters, which again, sister relationships are something that I love in books. I love exploring all different familial relationships. I believe one sister got sucked into a cult and the other sister is going after her and trying to investigate and bring her sister back home. I have really high hopes for this book. I think I'm gonna really, really like it. And then the third book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This is a young adult mystery novel. I believe it's mystery, but I think that there's also some like lightly fantastical elements involved in this too. Basically, this follows 4 girls who are the daughters of like famous figures in fantasy and science fiction. So I think like Dr. Jekyll's daughter and Dr. Frankenstein's daughter. I think like things like that. I'm not entirely sure who all the characters are going to be. I think it follows 4 girls. It could be more, could be less. Like I honestly don't know. But like they get together and they solve murders, and honestly like that premise just sounds so good. Of these 3 books, this is the only one that I already owned before I started planning for this series. I bought this on my own like years ago because I just thought that it sounded so interesting. So I do think if I had to guess that this is probably the one that I will enjoy the most. I'm just really excited to see what this book does with the source material and how it extrapolates it to make brand new characters, how they interact with the world. I'm excited for the mystery part of it. I just think it's gonna be really, really fun. Okay, so there you go. There's the TBR for this vlog. I'm gonna go wash off my makeup now. I just did a 10-hour stream, so I'm sure I look kind of crusty at this point. I'm gonna get some food and I'm gonna start reading one by one. It is my day off, so I am honestly hoping that I can finish this, probably not in one sitting, but like within the next 24 hours. I would like to finish at least one of these books. So I will talk to you when I have something exciting to say. Later. Good morning. Please excuse my overall level of crustiness. I'm about to get in the shower and wash my hair and do all my skincare, so I know I'm not looking good right now. It's fine. I have some good news and some bad news, I suppose, I guess. I finished One by One by Ruth Ware. The good news is that it's not a 2-star read. It's good news that this book is not a 2-star because this is the second novel I have read by Ruth Ware, and the first novel I read, The Death of Mrs. Westaway, I gave 2 stars because I was super bored the entire time. So, you know, this is getting 3 stars. And that's the good news. The bad news is I don't think I'm ever gonna read anything by Ruth Ware again. I think she is not for me. Ruth doesn't care about this, to be perfectly honest. Like, she can dry her fake tears over me saying that she's not an author for me with the piles and piles of money that she has from all of her bestsellers. Ruth Ware has the mystery thriller girlies by the throat. They love her to death. If you're a Ruth Ware girly, like, good for you. I'm so happy that her writing works for you, that you enjoy her. I knew that I was getting a bit risky picking this one, and I have to say I didn't dislike it. I just thought that it was fine. At no point was I ever bored enough to consider DNFing and putting the book down. I read this book in less than 24 hours. It's very consumable. But honestly, after this week, after this vlog, I'm probably never gonna think about this book again. This book gives me, you don't have anything else to read at the airport, so you buy this for $4.99. Like, that's what this book gives me, which is also kind of appropriate because, like, all the characters in here are, like, on a sort of vacation company retreat type thing until they lose power and people start dying. Before the bodies start showing up, it's a good time for them. For me, it was a fine time. I mean, I was, like, decently entertained by this. I think it was, like, fairly unpredictable, which was nice. I could not tell until about 65% of the way through who the killer was. And I think that was also, like, intentional with Ruth Ware. So, like, in The Death of Mrs. Westaway, I was able to guess everything, like, way before I think it was intended to. I think, however, in this one, Ruth Ware did a much better job making a whole cast of characters all look suspicious for, like, their own reasons. So it really was believable for, you know, a good 2/3 of the book who the killer could be. I think I only figured it out when Ruth Ware wanted me to figure it out. So credit to her for writing that. I would say this book is like 60% mystery, 40% thriller. It really truly rides the line between those two genres. And I would say that, like, the first 60% of the book, when you're trying to, like, figure out who the killer is, that is very much mystery oriented. And then once you figure out who the killer is, it does turn quite a bit more thrilling. There is definitely tension in this book. When I read The Death of Mrs. Westaway, there was, like, no tension at any point in time, and even though some people read it and said it was a great thriller, in my opinion, there was no thrilling aspect in The Death of Mrs. Westaway at all. And in One by One, I definitely agree that it is a thriller. You know, there were moments where I was a little bit on the edge of my seat. And I want to clarify, I was only a little bit on the edge of my seat. Like I said, this is, like, very entertaining, but it's also a 3-star read. At no point was anything in this mind-blowing. At no point was I, like, gagged by what was going on. It's hard sometimes to give a good review for a 3-star book because I'm just left feeling like, yeah, it's fine. This is a book that, like, I'm never gonna recommend, but, like, if my mom was going on vacation to a beach, I might be like, here, take this with you. You can read it in an afternoon type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. It just didn't do anything special for me. I just don't see myself picking up a book by her ever again. And you know what? Like, that's okay. I intentionally chose a book by Ruth Ware for this video, knowing that I was testing to see if I wanted to read any more books by her. And even though it's not the ideal answer, at least I have an answer. So there we go. We can now move on to book 2 in this vlog, which is The Project. It's a cult story about sisters. There's a lot of things going on in this book that I like, so I will talk to you when I have an update. Bye! This vlog is going downhill. I do not have good news for you right now. I don't think I have ever just been so ambivalent to a book. I'm not bored. I just literally feel nothing. This is the most medium book I have ever read in my life. Like, I genuinely feel nothing at all. I think I'm gonna give The Project 2.5 stars. 2.5 is exactly the midpoint from 0 to 5. And so I feel like this book is exactly medium. This is definitely a disappointment because I genuinely thought that this was going to be at least a 4-star. Normally when I don't love a book, I can usually pinpoint what it was that missed for me. You know, obviously reading is a subjective hobby, and things that I love other people don't love, and things that other people love I don't love, but I can usually figure out what it is that's missing from a book and why it didn't work. But like, I'm genuinely flummoxed. Like, I don't think that there was anything wrong with this book. Like I said before, this follows a girl whose sister got brainwashed and pulled into a cult, and now the sister is trying to track her down and figure out where she is, because every time she tries to like contact the cult, they're like, your sister doesn't want to talk to you, she doesn't want to speak to you. So the sister's just like trying to track her down. It's not as easy as just like going somewhere, because like the cult has like multiple locations, so she's trying to find her sister, basically trying to bring her sister home. I did not dislike the writing. I didn't dislike any of the characters. I mean, like, the cult leader wasn't a great character, but like I didn't dislike the main character or like the sister, like the side characters or anything like that. The pacing I thought was really good. The plot seemed fine. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with the plot. I genuinely don't know why I am so ambivalent about this book. I cannot tell you what happened here. It just doesn't, it's a mystery. It's a mystery to me, and I don't understand it. I did, however, want to point out that Courtney Summers in this book does not like glamorize or romanticize like cult-like behavior, and I think that that is really important. Obviously, like, cults are a real thing. Anyone can get sucked into a cult. They are a real thing. It is a very sensitive topic, and I think it's something that needs to be approached with empathy. And while I didn't feel anything reading this book, I could at least appreciate that Courtney Summers was very, very respectful with how she handled the topics and themes in this book, and I think that that is really important. So kudos to Courtney Summers. I'm not surprised by that, because she was so empathetic and respectful when she wrote Sadie. Again, I read Sadie and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was phenomenal. I highly recommend Sadie. I Can't recommend this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I genuinely feel like I'm letting everybody down. I'm so sorry about this. I did also want to apologize overall for the lack of B-roll footage in this vlog. I have been very, very busy in my real life, and it's been really nice. I've been doing a lot of family stuff, and I like that. Like, family time is really nice and important to me, but I don't vlog when I am with my family, so I'm so sorry. It's been a lot of family stuff. We've been having like Father's Day and birthdays. This week I have been on the go so many days, and it is taking up like all my free time, so I do apologize for the lack of B-roll. Moving on though, we have a 2.5 and a 3-star book for this vlog. We have one more chance to get a 5-star. Next up, I'm gonna be reading The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I will talk to you later. Good morning. Sorry for the jump scare. I am doing a face mask right now, so I was like, you have 10 minutes to just sit there, and I was like, might as well do a vlog update. For those of you who are wondering, this is the Fenty Cookies and Clean clay mask. I want to make it clear, I am not like a skincare expert at all. I'm very easily influenced, and I don't know that much. I strictly go off of recommendations of other people. So like, if I'm using a product that you know is crap, let me know. However, I did just want to say that I have used this face mask 4 times now, and I do really like it. I have very dry skin, so I really don't like clay masks because they dry out my skin a lot. However, this one does not dry out my skin. I found it to be really, really gentle, really nice. I like it. And clay masks are, according to the skincare girlies, very good for clogged pores, so I like this. I do feel like it works. So yeah, if you're looking for a clay mask and you want to take the opinion of a random girl on the internet who doesn't know anything about skincare, here you go. Anyways, I'm about halfway through The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and you can see where my bookmark is. I'm really enjoying this. This is a really, really good time. What I said at the beginning of this vlog is essentially true. I was incorrect though. It is 5 girls that we're following, and I won't tell you who all of them are, but I really, really like all of the Easter eggs to like classic sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. I think it's really, really great. It's honestly really making me want to read more classics too. I would say like the main character, the one that you spend the most amount of time in their POV, is Mary Jekyll, and basically she finds some notes left behind from her father, and they kind of have a mystery in them, and then that mystery slowly becomes connected to a string of murders that is happening in the city. And it's just fantastic. It's really, really fun. Like, this is a book if you want a fun adventure. It's so charming and quirky and silly, and I'm really just having the best time reading it. The formatting and styling of it is very fun and unique. Basically, the girls are writing their own story of how they all met and how they all got dragged into this murder mystery, and it's written by one of them, and like the others will constantly interject into the story, and that is like really, really cute. I love seeing all of the characters interact with each other. There's very, very strong found family vibes in this book. Honestly, the plot is like really progressing. I think the pacing is excellent, and I think the mystery is very engaging. Like, I definitely look forward to picking this book up. I will say that it is reading a little bit on the young side, and the characters in here I believe range from like 14 to 22, with a couple of exceptions, because like there's also some fantasy elements in here, so that screws with the timeline. But then also one of the main characters is like the housekeeper, Mrs. Poole, and she's like a middle-aged lady, and I love her. I love her. She's so funny. Even though the characters are on the older side of young adult, I do think this reads on the younger side of young adult, but it's still really engaging. I'm having a really good time. Okay, I've got like 4 more minutes before I have to take this off, but I'm gonna go. There's your short update. Again, I'm sorry for the lack of B-roll in this vlog. It's been a very, very busy week, but I'll check in with you when I finish The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Bye! Hello, good morning, and welcome to the end of the vlog. I have finished The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and it's great. After those last 2 books, it feels so good to be reading this book. This book is just, it's a delight. It's a pure delight, and I'm just glad that I can end this vlog on a good note. I don't really know that I can tell you much more about the specifics of the book from my last update. This is a book that you should read if you want something silly and goofy to lift your spirits and make you smile, if you need some found family, if you need some girl power, if you need some snarkiness in your life. I don't read from the cozy mystery genre, and it's not that like I'm opposed to it, I just like haven't read, so I don't know if this qualifies as a cozy mystery, but it definitely feels that way to me as someone who knows nothing about it. This whole book was just so cozy, and they're sitting around the table drinking their tea, solving mysteries. It's really, really cute. I think overall I am settling with a 3.5 for this book. That feels very right to me. I think that the strength of this book is how comforting it makes you feel, and I did really like that, but I don't necessarily know that I can give it more than a 3.5. Now, I do think part of it is that I am not the intended audience for this. Honestly, I do think that because this does read on the younger side of young adult, at least to me, that did hamper a little bit of my ability to fully connect with the story. I want to make it clear though, like I fully enjoyed myself and I had a great time. This is such a good adventure story. I was engaged and enjoying myself the entire time, but I did feel a lack of personal connection, and I do think that was because I am just older than the intended audience, and that's okay. You know, there are some books that I think transcend all age categories, and I don't think that this is one of them, but that doesn't mean that I didn't absolutely enjoy the crap out of this book. I definitely recommend this book if anything I've said sounds fun to you. The amount of Easter eggs in here was so fun to me. I really loved it. I haven't even told you some of my favorite characters in here because I honestly don't even want to tell you about them because I just think that you should read it and discover for yourself. All of the different characters are so fun, and like they all interact with each other in different ways, and they're all pairing off with each other in different combinations, and like it's very like Scooby Squad. It's really great. It's so cute. It's so wholesome, heartwarming, all of those things. This is definitely a win for me. I'm very happy that I read this. I'm very happy I own it. I will say that while there is setup at the end of this book for for continuing because this is a trilogy. I think that the ending to this book was great because the ending is so satisfying. Even though they are setting up for a continuation in the series, I do think that you could read just this book as a standalone if you wanted to. I think that's how I'm gonna treat it for now. Maybe later when I've like shortened the list of series that I'm in the middle of, then I'll continue with this. It's a great time. I'm so happy that I'm ending on a win with this. When I take the average of these 3 books, Meg has a score of 3 even for this round of the Booktube Knockout. Again, I know that that means that like technically Kayla scored higher than Meg. However, it doesn't matter for Meg what Kayla's score is, and those are like the only 2 scores I know at the moment. For Meg, it only matters the score of the person who is like ranked 3rd in the brackets, which you don't know who that is. I know who it is, but you don't know who it is. That brings us to the end of round 2 of the Booktube Knockout. I will see you next week for round 3, where I read books from the person who is ranked number 7 out of 8. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Stay safe and stay hydrated this week. It's getting really hot out, so make sure that you are bringing water everywhere, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!